Spoiler: government regulators and food media have oversimplified food safety and ruined a mountain of meat in the process. Yes, your chicken can be juicy, slightly pink, and entirely safe to eat. But seemingly benign things like taking an antacid for indigestion might be a good reason to be careful at the next neighborhood potluck. Today, we're going to dive into the science of food safety and the confusing world of government regulations to separate fact from fiction. Because food poisoning sucks, but so does overcooked meat. After today's video, you will never overcook meat again, just to be sure. Is it done? Will the food be juicy and delicious? Will it be safe? This USDA poster perfectly illustrates why well-meaning food safety guidance is often ignored. The government says you should grill your steaks to a medium well-doneness of 145 degrees and cook chicken breast until it's dry and devoid of meaning at 165 degrees, all in the interest of food safety. These temperatures aren't ones that most people enjoy. So it seems like you have to choose between delicious or safe. But that's just not true. Food is complex, and so is the real food safety guidance. The food safety rules you've been taught are oversimplified. Sure, they're easy to understand, but they are also guaranteed to be ignored by anybody who doesn't enjoy overcooked meat. And that's unfortunate, because it doesn't have to be this way. It is absolutely possible to cook meat that is both delicious and safe. But to understand how and why, we need to understand a bit more about how bacteria grow and die depending on the temperature. Imagine you're a bacteria. What temperature is going to make you happy? Pretty much the same temperature we humans find comfortable. When it's cold, life is hard and things happen slowly. But as the temperature warms, it's more comfortable and the population grows. The warmer it gets, the better the party and the faster the population grows. Until it doesn't. Eventually, it's too damn hot. And like you would, bacteria try to do as little as possible. Their growth stops. As the temperature keeps rising, eventually you and bacteria both reach a threshold where you cannot survive. At 130 degrees Fahrenheit, you both might survive for a little while, but eventually you'll succumb to the heat. And that's why for food safety, it's never just about temperature. It's always temperature and time. Whew. Bacteria are exactly the same. In simple terms, this is how all bacteria live and die, including the harmful pathogenic ones that can make us sick. And it's why food safety is never just about temperature. It's always time and temperature. At 165 degrees, death comes instantly. But even at 130 degrees, harmful bacteria eventually succumb to the heat. So to reach the same level of safety as cooking meat to 165 degrees, you can just keep food at a lower temperature for longer and wait for enough bacteria to die. How much longer? It depends. To answer this, we need to think a bit about the odds of death. And to help explain that, I've invited my friend Dr. Douglas Baldwin over. Douglas is a mathematician and food safety expert who has published work on subjects like heat transfer in food and low-temperature pasteurization with sous vide cooking. Can we talk about, what is a reasonable reduction in the population to say something is safe?
Let's just say the food is contaminated by some foodborne pathogen, and it may not be, but let's say it is. If it is contaminated, roughly how many foodborne pathogens would there be? Mm-hmm. And then you have to look at the portion size. So you can see that it's all adding up. So you might say, okay, we have some number of active food pathogens per gram. We assume our portion is this number of grams, and we need to make sure with high probability that we have less than 2 or 3 foodborne pathogens in that entire serving, and that gives pretty large numbers, like we need to reduce 1 million to 1, or 6.5 million to 1, or 7.5 million to 1, or some number like this. So it's a game where we try and figure out how long does it take to destroy enough of the foodborne pathogens to make them safe. And for each individual foodborne pathogen, it's like a roll of the dice. So up here at cooking to 165, the probability that all the foodborne pathogens are destroyed almost instantaneously is good. Move down to, say, 140 degrees Fahrenheit, and for some number of minutes, some percentage of them will be reduced, and then hold it longer, and more of them will be reduced.
So what Douglas is saying is that food safety experts start with a worst-case scenario. For chicken, that's 10 million salmonella bacteria that need to be destroyed. At a given temperature, after a certain time, an individual bacteria either will or will not die. But for the entire population of bacteria, we can say about 90% will die on average. 10 million becomes 1 million in this given amount of time. Hold for that same time again, and the population reduces by 90% again. 1 million becomes 100,000, and so on. This is called decimal or log reduction, and it's what food safety guidance is built upon. So how do we turn theory into practice? You can use a kitchen timer. Once these chicken breasts reach 150 degrees, I'll just set the countdown to 3 minutes before serving them. But cooking a steak like this to 150 degrees Fahrenheit is a crime. Now, the USDA food safety tables actually go as low as 130 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'll put a link to those in the description below. But they also assume that you will hold the food carefully at that final temperature the required amount of time, which can be impractical. Ideally, you'd count every second the food spends above 130 degrees and just add up the total bacterial destruction at every temperature along the way until you reach the safety standard for whatever you're cooking. But that is pretty tedious and requires some calculus, which is why we end up with the oversimplified rules that lead to overcooked food. I found this pretty frustrating, so I fixed it. If you've watched my channel before, you know that I make the wireless predictive thermometer with my team at Combustion Inc. With 8 sensors, it has total temperature awareness from the surface to the core. It can and does track these temperatures for every second of cooking. So we've made it capable of adding up the total bacterial destruction like a meticulous accountant. Just select your food type and let SafeCook do the rest. It knows the minimum safe cooking temperature, what pathogen to use, and how quickly they will die at different temperatures. So it can just tell you when your food reaches the formal safety standard. Now you can enjoy your steak medium rare, your chicken breast tender and juicy, while knowing they've met food safety standards. We've essentially condensed the 762 pages of the current FDA and USDA FSIS guidelines into one smart thermometer, because everyone deserves food that's both safe and delicious. But here's a fact. You don't always have to cook to these standards. In your own home, you're the boss. That steak can be as rare as you like. For professional chefs, it's different. They answer to local health departments. And large-scale food producers, they face even stricter regulations and inspections from multiple agencies. In simple terms, the more people you cook for, the greater the stakes. A mistake with mass-produced foods could make thousands of people sick. It has happened. And this is why food safety regulations often seem extreme. They're written for these worst-case scenarios, mass-produced foods that spend days or even weeks traveling from factory to fork, with ample time for bacterial growth if things go wrong. And things do go wrong. Restaurants occupy a middle ground. We've all seen that menu warning that eating raw or undercooked foods increases the risk of foodborne illness. But what does this really mean? These risky foods aren't necessarily teeming with bacteria, although some may be present, usually not enough to make a healthy person ill, which is why you can ask the restaurant to prepare food to your preferred doneness, as long as you're given that warning. Whether this risk is worth it is, thankfully, a personal choice. But when cooking for others, I think it is crucial to be informed and considerate. As a professional chef, making somebody ill with my cooking is the last thing I want to do. The elderly, the very young, the very ill, and the pregnant are all groups of people where even a few bad bacteria could be life-threatening, and they should be cautious. And if you cook for these people, you should be cautious. Fine, you say. But you're not one of these people. Are you as healthy as you think? Are you recovering from a nasty cold? Under a lot of stress? Are you overweight? Maybe you're taking medications. Antibiotics, while life-saving, reduce the healthy bacteria in our gut that help protect us from harmful bacteria. Surprisingly, antacid tablets or drugs for acid reflux increase the chance of food poisoning by reducing the acidity in our stomach that is one of our body's first lines of defense against any ingested pathogens. All of these are factors that increase the chance of getting sick from a meal. And some studies have shown that 20% or 1 in 5 people is at a greater risk of food poisoning because of them. That number was shocking to me, and it's made me think more carefully about how I prepare a meal. It's the reason we created SafeCook and added it to the predictive thermometer. I want to make it easy for anybody to cook a meal that's delicious and safe. The point of all of this is not to say that you should be afraid of the food you eat. It's to give you the information to help you make the choice that's right for you and the people you cook for. Yes, intensively raised meats, especially poultry, are a higher risk, and they should be cooked accordingly. But that rare steak or a hamburger made from freshly ground beef sourced from a local producer is a much lower risk for most people. And that salad probably isn't trying to kill you. And I do love sushi. When prepared with care from impeccable ingredients, like my friend Tai Chi is doing here, it's one of my favorite things to eat. Life isn't risk-free, and for me, this small risk is more than outweighed by the pleasure it will give me. And now, I'll say thank you so very much for watching, and I hope all your meals are delicious and safe.